Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Rankable podcast. I'm your host, Garrett Sussman of iPullRank, and I am super excited. We are going to tackle this really kind of important and challenging world of project management when it comes to SEO. Today, I am joined by Montse Cano. She is an international SEO and digital marketing consultant. She kind of like brings herself in-house and works with like these long-term projects, but gets a lot done for her various clients. It's awesome. She's an all-around SEO, digital marketer, project manager, and specializes in integrating digital marketing areas to ultimately maximize marketing and business results. Thank you for joining me today, Montse.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I'm very excited to be here today.
Awesome. So one thing that I think is interesting in terms of getting SEO integrated into an organization is this project management, which can be challenging because you have to work with all of these different parts of a business. Project management can cover all different types of projects. How do you approach project management specifically for SEO?
Well, I tend to approach this project management program for SEO from a point of view of uncertainty. So managing uncertainty, which I know is slightly different from what most people would actually expect. But to me, controlling this uncertainty feeling is something really, really important, something that I started to think about and read more about in 2020. And I think it has had a very positive effect in my life. So it's all about making sure that we produce something which is valuable, which is going to be useful for the company, the organization that we are working for. So one of the first things that I do is familiarizing myself with the business. And as a consultant, I've been also in-house as well. But one of the very first things that I do is familiarizing myself with the business, what they do, what they don't do, their business vision, etc., etc. What I have done before as well, what has worked, etc., just to try and identify a need. That is extremely important. So following that, I kind of think about what I can do to meet that need. And then following from there, I just kind of start structuring the project. What I have to say is that the word project is is normally used in a very loose way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit like, I keep saying this, it's a bit like words like marketing or even philosophy. They are technical terms, but they have got popularized. So a lot of people use them interchangeably mm-hmm. with other words, just for lack of a better word at that moment in time. And the same works with projects. As a project is not something that has a loose meaning. It's something totally different. It's something very, very specific because the main end is to deliver something which is mm-hmm. going to be valuable. So that thing that is valuable needs to be agreed at the very beginning, and there are certain steps in order to achieve that. So those steps are the project initiation, which I have just commented on. Then you need to plan for mm-hmm. the roadmap. Then also at the same time that you do the roadmap, you plan for any risks, anything that might happen, how you're going to back up if there is a problem. Well, how are you going to do? What are you going to do if there is a problem? For example, when you have to pause that project because there is a company crisis, and obviously all hands needs to be on deck. For example, communication. Who are you going to be communicating with? How, when, etc., etc. Then you execute the project, because obviously no great idea is great without an appropriate execution. And this is when you actually decide as a project manager if you want to kind of direct that project in another way, in another direction. So things like, for example, you want to you wanted to do X, Y, Z, but then you don't have suddenly the resources that you need for that, and you had already agreed previously, et cetera, and then you have to basically turn that off, and then you can focus on something else.
I can imagine. So obviously an SEO project could either be like technically focused, it could be content focused, it could be research focused, or it could be holistic and cover everything. And I imagine it's also very easy for scope creep to happen where the project gets bigger and bigger and bigger, or as you mentioned, it gets cut off. How frequently are you kind of checking in with the progress of these projects, and what, like, how long do they typically take? Does it depends, like in SEO, or what do you prefer?
Really does depend on the actual project that you have in hand. So, for example, for migrations, website migrations, I check on progress all the time because I mean the main progress, the main aim is to have a website up and running in a certain time. And with those resources. But then obviously you are doing that because there is a real need for that. Maybe the previous platform just didn't work and it's like a black box. And I have worked on some black boxes as well during my career. And I know for a fact that there were terrible websites, no documentation whatsoever. And then a redirection to another platform was very much needed. So, you do that because of that, and because obviously you want to increase sales, et cetera. So you check on progress as you go along. But obviously, sometimes the scope of the project is much longer than just a few months or a few years or a couple of years, perhaps, or something.
Yeah, it's important to be able to rein it back in. And so I imagine, and I guess my question to you is, what are some of the things that most businesses actually get wrong when they're setting up an SEO project, for instance, that will like make it more likely to lead to failure? Like, what are those missteps?
In terms of SEO, one of the first and most annoying mistakes that I make is not checking with SEOs in the first place. Mm-hmm. So they have a digital project, and SEO being the basics of all digital, for me at least, it is the basics of all digital. I mean, you have a website, you have to have SEO no matter what. So many businesses just check with the technical people, and the technical people are IT, which is fantastic. I mean, they are technical, obviously, but hello, we are the ones who actually ask them to do certain bits for us so that the website is functioning, people can find it, and people can actually use it, and it produces benefit. So they don't just check with us, and that is a great mistake. But also, I think, from my experience, what I have seen so far is that in the job descriptions, they ask for people with great project management skills. And sometimes it's just not project management. It's more about organizational skill set, which is amazing. You have to have an organizational skill set no matter what, particularly in the industry that we are working on. You really have to have those skill set because we need to work very methodically, or at least I work very methodically towards the objective. But a project is something else. It's just not about organizational skill set. It's about knowing exactly how to structure a series of tasks.
Right.
And one of the very important, or the most important aspects is knowing how to close and when to close that project, which would be the last phase of any project whatsoever. I don't really think that I have seen so many projects being closed properly. I haven't seen that much documentation, which should have been there from the start, but then the closing documentation where you analyze all the steps that have happened before, what hasn't happened, all the issues, how you have overcome them, next steps, everything. I haven't seen that much recently.
Well, to that point, I'm curious about the documentation. Like, what is how do you recommend you document SEO performance? Like, how do you identify those KPIs? And then, because we know, there's the myth that SEO always takes more than 6 months, which isn't always the case. But for an SEO project that may take time to see the results, how do you evaluate that as a project manager?
I tend to build up GTS reports whenever possible. I mean, I've been in many different situations where I have never been able to do this. So I have been brought in just to do X, Y, Z. And I was there to deliver that particular bit. And no matter what other things I was able to do, or I'm able to do, I wasn't able to build up that GTS that GTS reports or anything else. So it really does depend. I have needed to adapt myself. But the idea is to build up a roadmap and a dashboard where everybody can actually see the report, the agreed metrics and KPIs, and so that everyone can actually see that. I think it also does depend, because one of the good things about from an artistic point of view, right?
Yes.
Project management is that you have to learn how to create charts and graphics and everything else. Yeah.
Right.
So this can be really interesting if you are actually have that creative mindset as well, which actually we need in marketing too, because a GTS report can be very useful for us, but might not be very useful for the C-suite, for example. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So what exactly it is that you build up for them? You can build up, I don't know, just anything, just like a radar or an issue radar or anything else, really. I have seen great reports being built as well for different people.
Yeah, I'm with you. It absolutely depends on who your stakeholders are and, surfacing the important information that they care about. I'm curious, actually, so for like large websites, I know you've worked with some large websites, what do you typically recommend with their like setting up projects? Do you usually go like from a content audience standpoint, do you go piece by piece? How should they prioritize their attention in your opinion?
I said earlier that I would start checking what the main issues or the main vision. Actually, we start with the vision of the actual company and the team or the marketing vision, et cetera, and then actually I just go from there. So it really does depend, because with big websites, you really need a big team and a lot of time. And sorting out, I don't know, the blog section might not actually bring that much benefit, but might be a very interesting piece to do at a later stage. So I would check, first of all, what exactly it is that they need. For example, if it is an e-commerce website, from an e-commerce website perspective, probably their products pages, category pages. That is the very first thing that I would actually check on every single company's website anyway. But from a bigger perspective, from a bigger website perspective, I would go onto that section in the first place. And then I would actually just take it from there and see exactly what it is needed, piece by piece, what would work best. But I would try and suggest the project in a holistic way. Checking their rankings as well, their benefits associated to those rankings, to that traffic that is coming through, et cetera.
I love that you mentioned e-commerce. And when we first started talking, you mentioned the idea that you've learned about this idea of managing uncertainty in your SEO projects. Now, speaking of which, there is this like talk of a potential looming recession. In your opinion, what are some of the opportunities and risks for SEO ahead of whatever's going to happen with that over the next few months, the next year or so?
We don't really know what is happening, right? we don't. We just kind of hear all the time that there might be a recession coming up, but we don't really have this crystal ball. Or at least mine doesn't work, and so so it's just like with the algo updates. It really is pretty much like that. I did say this recently. You really have to prepare for tough times regardless.
Right.
So, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just curious. So in terms of like SEO, how does that play into managing uncertainty? Like what would your approach be?
My approach would be to taking stock take of everything that you've got. So you can't really prepare for anything that might come up, whether it is good times or bad times or a bad algo update or anything, if you don't know what you've got. So I would definitely audit your website, or your app, your mobile app. And I would take into account what the needs are. So when I say auditing, I don't mean only a technical audit or a content audit. I would also check rankings. I would also check what exactly it is that they are bringing, whether they are bringing the right audiences, people who are actually buying, or people they are just recommending, just leaving the site and maybe coming back later, you don't know, etc., etc. So I would check all that and see whether there is something that needs to be taken into account. Because if there is a recession, we need to, from a marketing perspective, not just SEO, we need to readapt to a changing user behavior or a changing customer behavior. So we need to do further competitor analysis just to see whether we are looking for, maybe to reassure current audiences and customers that we are still there, that brands are still there, that brands have not gone into administration nor anything. They are there in case they actually want to go back to them, to buy from them, or to check anything with them, to consult with them. It just depends on the actual business. Because there have been these studies that were published by different universities that during recession, those businesses that do consistently advertise during and after a recession, even before a recession is coming, actually perform a lot better in the long run. That's different. That's for sure. Maybe they don't buy shoes or they don't buy jumpers right now, but they may be buying them later on. So they need to understand that you need to keep planting that idea on their head that they that you are still there for them.
That makes sense. That resonates with me because it's like you are doing two things. You are continuing to build up, your SEO, your organic presence so that when they do come back, you're there. But also it sounds like you really want to work from a marketing perspective holistically with your other teams to continue to build demand generation so that, wherever they are in their buyer's journey, you're still the one that they find when the other teams are basically saying, hey, we're still here. Come check us out.
Exactly. And talking about the journey path, you can also build new audiences with SEO. Yeah. Why not? I mean, if there's a change in users' behavior or customers' behavior, that might be for the better as well. You might actually find new audiences for your product or things that you didn't used to sell before, or I don't know, services as a consultant that you haven't sold before. Maybe you are able to actually find a new audiences for all that. But you have to really take things into account. I think businesses who cut down on marketing spend are not going to be looking that good after the recession, because they are going to be needing to double up their efforts afterwards. So those people who use downtime to check on their audience's needs, who check on their problems and issues and fix them, people who we assure their audiences that is still there, that they provide useful information to them. This is the helpful content update, right?
Yep.
Useful information all the time. Those businesses are going to grow. Those who don't do it are not going to be growing.
Yeah, and it's funny because it is such a situation where the people who have the resources, the bigger businesses that can continue to invest, will always have the advantage. Like, it's tough when you're a smaller player and you need to like really use your budget effectively. Montse, such great insights. I really appreciate you kind of sharing your experience with project management and international SEO, specifically in the context of a looming recession. I do want to dive into the rapid fire rankings. Are you ready to answer my questions?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Here we go. I'm going to turn on the music. We're going to get this going. Rapid fire rankings. Ready, go. Go. Okay, so rank your top 3 of anything that you love.
Jeez.
I love it. Okay, rank your best SEO or marketing win.
There are a few, but one of the ones that I actually regard as the most important ones for me is a replatforming that I did during the recession. During the during the pandemic, during 2020.
I know, so many major events in our lives, but replatforming is a huge challenge. Okay, rank your top 3 to 4 SEO tools.
I would say Screaming Frog, or the GSC, and Sidebulb, SEMrush. There are a few.
It's hard to limit it. Exactly. Rank your best SEO trick or tactic.
I would say keep checking on your website just in case there is something to fix. I think that is the most important thing sometimes, because there might be issues that you don't know that they're happening, but they are there and that you're having an issue. Things like an hreflang tag that has not been implemented properly. And I have seen some crazy hreflang tags.
Yes, SEO is always going. Rank what you love most about SEO.
The fact that I keep learning. It's a non-stop thing. Every single time I talk to someone, they tell me something that I haven't tried or I haven't seen before, or maybe I have, but I have forgotten about it because, I mean, in your day-to-day business, you don't utilize every single tactic or strategy.
Rank your best learning SEO resource.
Talking to other SEOs.
I agree.
Yeah, totally. And that can be podcasts as well, and attending conferences, attending events, or sometimes even just having a coffee with them. And because we might actually talk about something else, but we go back to SEO at all times, and we don't care. Other people from other industries seem to kind of avoid finances or anything else that they do in their day-to-day. They just avoid it because it causes them stress, whereas we don't feel like that.
I'm with you. I love SEO. It's fun to talk about. Okay, rank the 1 to 3 top SEO or marketers that you most look up to.
From an SEO perspective, I have to name Dawn Anderson.
Mm-hmm. She's brilliant.
She's absolutely brilliant, and the fact that she has taken SEO into academia. Oh my God, academia! I would have never thought that SEO could actually go into academia. I'm still thinking I'm playing with computers. I'm still thinking I'm getting paid to actually play. So just think about academia, which is something so super serious and everything. I just love that. So she's one of them. And other SEOs, it would be difficult for me to name all of the people that I am following, but mostly the old guard. Sorry, can I call them like that? Old guard?
The old school SEOs who've been doing it for 10, 20, 30 years at this point. I love it. And finally, rank your top 1 or 2 causes or charities that you want to promote.
Yes, I would like to promote 2 things, two aspects. So first of all, the Red Cross, and second of all, the Buy Me a Coffee that Anton Schulk has set up to help we've got some dog shelters in Ukraine at this moment in time. The reason why I have chosen both two is because the actual work that they are doing in very tough times, in a huge disaster, in a huge human disaster, is just amazing. So the fact that there are people on the borders, Polish borders, etc., just providing medicines, it's just amazing. They sometimes are risking their own lives. So I have heard recently that there were some trained doctors, I think, on the Polish border, and they were there to receive families and children. They were dressed up as clowns, so that they would actually put a fantastic smile on their faces. That was awesome. When I read about that, it was like, wow. And I've heard they are Red Cross people, so please help them out. Whether it is the UK Red Cross, the Spanish Red Cross, the Polish Red Cross, it doesn't matter. Just go help them, please, if you can. Please.
I love that. And we have the link in the description, so you'll be able to access it there. Wonderful, Montse. I really appreciate your insights. If somebody wants to find you online and talk to you about project management SEO or international SEO, where's the best way to find you?
At the moment on LinkedIn, because my website is coming up. I mean, it's coming up for years, too busy with clients' websites. But it is coming up. I will advertise properly later on. And at the moment, I'm on Twitter, very active on Twitter and on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a blast. Thank you.
Awesome. My name is Garrett Sussman of iPullRank. This has been the Rankable podcast. Check us out next week, and thank you for listening. Bye-bye.